Hello everyone, it's James from DivyneCrochet. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to continue with a series of beginner lessons for crochet, and we're going to pick up where we left off from our last lesson. I'm going to use the same yarn and hook size that I used before, which is acrylic chunky yarn, and I'm going to use a 6mm hook. You will also need a pair of scissors and a darning needle. In this video, we're going to learn how to make a simple granny square bag, and I'm going to go through all the stitches you will need, as well as how to make the granny squares and assemble the bag. Starting off with a slip knot, we're going to start learning how to do our double crochets, which we'll be utilizing in our granny squares. So after doing our slip knot, we'll want to chain 10, and this is just going to be a practice swatch of double crochets. If you're not familiar with how to do a slip knot or chain stitches, you'll want to check out the lesson before. Once you get to that 10th chain, you're going to do 2 chains, which will act as our turning double crochet. And then we're going to go into that 9th chain that we made. So you want to yarn over back to front over your hook. Then you're going to insert into the same point that you would when you do your single crochets to pull up a loop. Yarn over, you should now have 4 loops on your hook. You're going to pull that yarn over through 2 loops. So now you should have 2. Yarn over again, pull through. So I'll show you that again. You're going to yarn over, insert into that chain stitch where those V's are, as we did in the last lesson, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through twice. So you just want to practice this motion a few times. As I say, it's quite similar to the action of doing a single crochet, so you should be able to do this stitch first. For this swatch, you should have those chain 2s as the turning chain, and you should in total have 9 double crochets. So this is technically a swatch of 10, but one of those stitches is a chain 2. So once you do that final stitch, you're going to chain 2, turn your work. Instead of working into that first loop, we're going to work into the second loop to carry on our swatch. And we're just going to continue this down the line. And as I say, you want to make sure that in each row you have that chain 2 and then 9 double crochets. When you get to the end of the second row, you want to make sure that your final double crochet is into that last chain stitch. Then you're going to carry on the pattern of chaining 2 and doing those 9 double crochets. And you can build this up in your own time, and once you're happy with this, we can start learning how to do our granny square. So to start off our granny square, we want to start with a slip knot, and we're going to chain 4. There are other ways that you can start your granny square, but as a beginner, this is going to be the easiest one for you to begin with. So once you have done those 4 chains, you want to get your hook and insert it into that first stitch that you made, yarn over, and then pull through both loops. This is called a slip stitch. And now, as you can see, I've made like a little circle, and this point right here in the middle, that's where we're going to work in all of our stitches. So we're going to chain 2, and we're going to do our first double crochet, but instead of doing it into a chain or into a stitch, we're going to do it into that middle circle. So we've done our chain 2, our first double crochet, and now we're going to do a second double crochet. And this is going to be our first cluster. So we're going to chain 2, which is going to act as a corner to our square before adding another cluster, but this time we're just going to do 3 double crochets. And then once you've finished these 3 double crochets, you're going to chain 2 and repeat the pattern of doing 3 double crochets and chaining 2 till you have a total of 4 clusters. And I'm showing you here what I do is I kind of maneuver the double crochets around the circle, so I have room to add in these clusters. This is how we're going to build up that initial middle of our granny square before adding our second row. So once you've done your final cluster and you chain 2, you want to insert your hook into that chain 2 that you started off that row with. And at this point you should have 4 clusters and 4 holes. And what we're going to do to start off our next row is we're going to chain 2 and then we're going to turn our work. Once you've turned your work, you want to start adding your clusters again to create the second row. So we're going to insert our hook into the chain 2 space, and add 2 double crochets. After this we'll chain 2 and add a total of 3 double crochets into the exact same chain space that we were working into before. So for this second row, what we're going to do is we're only going to work into the 4 corners that we made by chaining 2 in the row before. So once you've finished those 3 double crochets, we'll finish this cluster. So our next cluster is going to go into our next space, which is going to be that chain 2 space. So in some granny squares patterns, they will get you to chain 1 before doing these. As we're going to make a bag, I want this material to be a bit denser, so I'm just going to go straight away and go in with those 3 double crochets before chaining 2 and putting 3 double crochets. And all of that is going to happen in this chain space that we made before, and we're going to do this for each corner of our work. So in total, our second row should have 8 clusters. And once you've gone all the way around your work and done those 8 clusters, you should have those 4 corners. Just have another look at your work. What we're going to do is that second chain we made at the start of our row, we're going to slip stitch into, and as you can see, we're building up our third row now. So once we've done our slip stitch, we're going to chain 2 and turn our work, and now you can see we're introduced to these little spaces we have in between the clusters. So we're going to start adding clusters here as well. So I'm adding 2 triple crochets after my chain 2. As I said before, make sure you turn your work, and now we're going to go into these corners straight away. So add your 3 double crochets before chaining 2 and adding those 3 double crochets back into that same chain space. So what's changed when it's come to this row is now we're introduced to, we're going to do a cluster of 3 triple crochets in between these corners that we're working into. So I'll show you again. We have the space here, and that's where we're going to add a cluster of 3 double crochets before moving straight on to that corner. So whilst working around your granny square, you want to bear in mind that in the spaces where you've chained 2 for the corners, that's where you want to do the 2 clusters of 3 and the chain 2. And when it comes to working in between the clusters on the sides of your square, that's where you just want to do a singular cluster of 3. So how you can check that you're doing this correctly is you can see I'm on row 3. I should have 3 clusters of double crochets in between each one of my corners. So in my third row, it should be 3 clusters and then a chain 2, 3 clusters, chain 2, just like that. And as you can see, I've slip stitched into that second chain I made at the start, and I'm going to repeat the pattern of chaining 2, turning my work, and now we're going to work in between the 2 clusters. So that's just going to be a singular cluster before working into this corner, where I'll do a cluster of 3 before chaining 2 and doing another cluster into the exact same hole. So as I said before, this is going to be our 4th row, so there should be 4 clusters of 3 double crochets in between each one of our corners. And what we're going to do is we're going to work around our project. We're going to slip stitch in the second chain that we made at the start of our work before chaining 2, turning our work, and doing a 5th row. And this is what your granny square should look like after you've completed your 5th row. So I'm just going to show you how I would finish off a granny square. You do need to make a second one for your bag, so you'll slip stitch into that chain 2 space like you normally would before cutting your yarn and pulling that through the loop on your hook. Once you have those 2 granny squares, you're ready to construct our granny square bag. First, you want to make sure that you have the same side facing outwards. So for this project, I have chosen this side where the stitches around the garment kind of look like little polos or little donuts rather than plaits. That's going to be my side that I put on the outside. So what you could do is you could just sew around the project in this shape. However, I'm going to show you an alternative method where you can use single crochet. We're going to start off with a slip knot, and then we'll insert our hook into the slip knot before tightening it. And then what we're going to do is we'll find that chain stitch next to the first cluster that we want to work into in both sides, and we'll insert our hook into here. For me, I just make sure that where I'm inserting my hook in one side, I'm making sure I do the exact same on the other side. So as you can see, both of these chain stitches, I've got 2 loops above my hook when I insert my hook. And now what we're going to do is we're going to work a single crochet in before working down the whole length of this panel, making sure that you insert your hook into both of the panels. You just want to work a single crochet stitch all around, and you want to do all 3 sides, leaving one open. And for the 2 corners that you go around, you want to make sure that you put a single crochet into each one of the chain stitches. Once you reach the final side, you want to make sure that you work your final single crochet into that first chain stitch away from that cluster. And then what we're going to do is we're going to chain the length of strap that we would like before slip stitching into the first single crochet we made to attach these 2 panels together. And then from here, what we're going to do is we're going to work a row of just single crochets along the whole length of our chain. And for me, I'm going to work into these back posts. If you don't feel comfortable doing this yet, then you can just work into the chain stitch like I taught you in the previous lesson. And once you've finished these straps, you just want to sew in your ends. So I'm showing you here, I just insert my yarn into my hook before just inserting them into the surface layer of our bad side of our bag, which will be the inside of our bag. So as you can see, I'm just putting my needle through the surface layer of the stitches, making sure that you go through the actual yarn, not the stitches. So you want to make it almost look a little bit messy. This means that it will have more hold. And because it's on the bad side, we won't really notice. And once you've pulled this through a few times and you're happy that it's secure, you can trim this yarn. And once you've finished these ends, then you're done. Obviously, in this tutorial, we made this bag, which I think came out really cute, but you can use these granny squares to make a lot of different projects. And if you would like some inspiration or a tutorial on other things you can do with granny squares, please let me know. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment and subscribe. I've also got an Instagram, a TikTok and an Etsy, which I have linked down below. I hope you have a good day, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.